The plot thickens in the Nolan Wells case, y'all. And of course, everything is all alleged. Now, it's been alleged that Katie and Bart had a thing going on. And Bart wasn't just there to celebrate the 4th of July. Bart was there to put an end to that shit that Nolan had going on with Katie. And this is why they lined Nolan up, allegedly.
There's a new name in the Nolan Wells case, and online, people are asking whether it changes everything we thought we knew about the night he disappeared. For weeks, this case has centered on one mystery woman, Katie McCormack. She's the last person known to have spent time with Nolan on Horn Island before he vanished. But now a second name is surfacing, a man named Bart Edmiston Jr., and a theory is spreading fast. Was Katie secretly involved with him the whole time? And if so, does that explain why her story and the story from Nolan's friends don't match? I'm going to walk you through everything that's actually confirmed in this case. The timeline, the autopsy, the audio, the FBI's involvement, and then get into exactly where this Katie Bart theory comes from and where it stands right now. Stick around, because there's a lot more here than one rumor. If you've been following this case, hit subscribe now. New developments are dropping almost weekly, and I don't want you to miss the next one. Before we get into the theories, let's ground this. Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old, a wide receiver who'd played at Ocean Springs High School before moving on to Southwest Mississippi Community College. Friends and family describe him as someone who brought joy into every room he walked into. On July 4th, 2026, Nolan joined a group of friends on a boat trip to Horn Island, a barrier island off Mississippi's Gulf Coast. It was supposed to be a normal holiday outing. Instead, it became the center of one of the most closely watched missing persons cases in the country. Here's what's documented about that day. Nolan was last seen alive near the northwest end of the island around 3 p.m., shirtless, in swim trunks, wearing sunglasses. Around that time, friends say he was talking with a young woman. The woman later identified as Katie. According to Nolan's friends, they urged him to get back on the boat with them, but he told them he was going to stay behind with the girl. They say they left the island around 4:30 p.m., but here's where the first real crack in the story appears. Witnesses have told police they saw Nolan on the island as late as 6 p.m., a full hour and a half after his friends claimed they'd already left. On top of that, newly released audio adds another layer. A distress call was placed from the friend's boat around 4 p.m. that same afternoon, before they say they departed, to a private towing company called Sea Tow. In the recording, a panicked teen tells the dispatcher the boat's bilge pump had failed, and they were taking on water, pleading for help. Sea Tow didn't end up towing them. Another boat anchored near the island stepped in, and the group eventually restarted their engine and made it back to the mainland on their own. So we've got a boat in distress around 4 p.m., a claimed departure at 4:30 p.m., and witnesses placing Nolan on the island until 6 p.m. Those pieces don't fully line up yet, and that gap is a big part of why this case hasn't settled down. Nolan's mother, Christine Wansley, reported him missing that night when he didn't come home. Search crews spent 2 days combing the area before a U.S. National Park Service ranger found his body at the northwestern tip of the island on the morning of July 6th. Katie McCormack, 19, was identified by the Daily Mail as the young woman Nolan was last seen speaking with. Her sister, Gracie McCormack, has done most of the public talking on Katie's behalf. Gracie says Katie was on the island that day with a different group of friends entirely, and that after her conversation with Nolan, Katie assumed he was heading back to the boat he'd arrived on. Katie, in Gracie's telling, had no idea Nolan had been separated from his friends. Gracie has also said Katie left the island with her own brother and his fiancé, not with Nolan's group. Gracie has stressed that Katie has fully cooperated with investigators and has not been accused of any wrongdoing. Katie herself has not spoken publicly, but that account directly conflicts with what Nolan's friends have said. Nolan's best friend, Javon Williams, told the Biloxi Sun-Herald that he last saw Nolan after 4 p.m., hanging out with the girl and other friends, and that both Nolan and Katie had left their phones on the boat. The Wells family's attorney, Ben Crump, has zeroed in on exactly this contradiction. Katie's side says Nolan was getting on the boat. The friends say Nolan chose to stay on the island. Somebody's account doesn't match what actually happened, and nobody's officially said whose. Investigators also looked into a woman named Lainey, who was initially believed to be part of the group on the island with Nolan. But Lainey told police she wasn't on Horn Island at all that day. She said she was on a different island entirely with a different set of friends. So Lainey has been effectively ruled out as the mystery girl, leaving Katie as the name at the center of it. Now let's get to the name driving this new wave of theories. According to TMZ, investigators met with a man named Bart Edmiston Jr. as part of the broader investigation, and they pulled data from his boat. That's the confirmed, documented fact. Edmiston owned a boat connected to the case, and police reviewed data from it. That's genuinely it, as far as on-record reporting goes. There's no named source, no police report, no attorney statement, no on-camera interview that has laid out exactly what role Edmiston's boat data played, or why his boat specifically was of interest. TMZ's reporting ties him to the wider net investigators cast while trying to reconstruct who was where on Horn Island that day. Here's where I want to slow down and be really careful with you, because this is the part of the story that's pure online speculation right now. Amateur investigators and true crime accounts on TikTok and in Facebook groups have started floating the idea that Katie McCormack and Bart Edmiston Jr. were secretly dating, and that this hidden relationship explains why Katie's version of July 4th doesn't cleanly match the account from Nolan's friends. The theory usually points to photos being passed around online as proof. I have not found this relationship confirmed by any named investigator, law enforcement source, or either family. No court filing, no police statement, no on-record comment from Gracie McCormack or anyone representing Bart Edmiston Jr. has confirmed a romantic connection between the two of them. I'm flagging that clearly because this case has already produced multiple viral claims that turned out to be shaky. A photo that circulated widely, appearing to show Nolan at a pool, was reportedly not even from July 4th, according to his own best friend. And just this week, an enhanced version of the Sea Tow distress call had people online swearing they could hear background voices saying things like, "Is he dead?" or "Check his chest." TMZ, which released the audio, was explicit that none of those interpretations are confirmed. The recording is muffled enough that different listeners hear completely different things in the same few seconds. A forensic audio expert has since publicly disputed those enhanced audio claims altogether. So, real boat, real man, real data pulled by police. A secret relationship with Katie? Right now, that's an online theory riding on top of confirmed facts, not a confirmed fact itself. While that rumor spreads online, the actual forensic side of this case has been moving forward, and it's arguably the most important part of the story. Nolan's family commissioned a private, independent autopsy funded by former NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick. It was performed on July 10th, 6 days after Nolan disappeared and 4 days after his body was found, by Dr. Robert Mitchell, a board-certified forensic pathologist and president of the National Medical Association. Attorney Ben Crump announced the preliminary results at a news conference during the NACIV's National Convention in Chicago on July 22nd. The findings, cause, and manner of death were listed as undetermined, pending further investigation. A few specific details stood out. The pathologist found an area of red discoloration in the soft tissue at the back of Nolan's head, but no skull fractures and no lacerations to the skin in that area. The report noted the significance of Nolan's death occurring in or around a body of water, while pointing out that Nolan could swim, meaning that alone doesn't explain what happened. Crump also revealed that during the original state autopsy, part of Nolan's throat had been removed, which doctors say isn't unusual for a first autopsy, but which can complicate a second, independent one, since that tissue may not be available to re-examine. No toxicology results were included in this private report yet. Crump was careful to frame this as one piece of a larger picture. In his words, the findings gave the family more information, but also left them, in his own words, with more questions than answers at that point. Nolan's mother, Christine Wansley, said not having the official state autopsy results yet has been deeply frustrating for the family, and his father, Elmore, said plainly that all they want is the truth. The official state autopsy, conducted by the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office, has not yet been publicly released. Reports indicate it's being held pending review by a grand jury once the investigation is complete. This case has also drawn in federal law enforcement, not to investigate Nolan's death directly, but to look into what's happening around it. Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter confirmed the FBI is helping examine digital evidence in the case, which he said isn't unusual, since Horn Island sits on federal land and his office regularly works with the FBI on cases there. Separately, Mississippi's Department of Public Safety Commissioner Sean Tindell said the FBI is investigating threats made against public officials, witnesses, and Nolan's own family. The FBI confirmed to reporters it's working to address what it called interstate threats connected to the case. One of Nolan's friends, Trayston Shepard, told ABC News that he and others who were with Nolan on the island have received threats themselves. He said it worries him for his friends and for his family. Commissioner Tindell placed a lot of the blame for that hostility on false information spreading online, which, frankly, brings us right back to the caution I mentioned earlier about unverified theories. There's also been a political layer here. Mississippi's governor has pointed blame at Ben Crump and civil rights activist Al Sharpton, accusing them of stoking division around the case, while the Wells family and Crump have continued to push publicly for full transparency from local authorities. Sheriff Ledbetter has said his office has now interviewed more than 60 witnesses, including the 3 friends who were on the boat with Nolan, and that the investigation remains open. So let's zoom out. What's confirmed? Nolan disappeared after telling friends he'd stay behind with a girl identified as Katie McCormack. His friends say they left around 4:30 p.m., but witnesses placed Nolan on the island as late as 6 p.m., and a distress call from the friend's own boat around 4 p.m. adds another wrinkle to that timeline. Katie's family disputes that Nolan intentionally stayed behind for her. A private autopsy came back undetermined, with a red discoloration on the back of Nolan's head that investigators haven't explained. The FBI is investigating threats tied to the case, and a man named Bart Edmiston Jr. is a documented part of the investigation because police pulled data from his boat. What's not confirmed? Any relationship between Katie and Bart. Right now, that's a theory circulating online, built on photos and speculation, not on anything a named source, attorney, or investigator has put on the record. If a connection like that were ever confirmed, it could matter, because it might explain motive behind conflicting accounts. But could matter if true, and is true, are very different things, and this case has already shown how fast unverified claims spread before they get walked back. So where does that leave us? An active, unresolved investigation, a family still waiting on official autopsy results, a federal probe into threats against the people connected to this case, and, layered on top of all of it, an unconfirmed rumor about Katie and Bart that the internet has run with faster than any investigator has confirmed anything. I'll keep tracking every update on this one, because this case has a habit of shifting within days. If you want to be the first to know the moment something is actually confirmed, about Katie, about Bart, about the autopsy, any of it, subscribe and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.